There's so much in the Black community that we have to unlearn. Like, this shit'll have you f***ed up, like, for real. Like, all that, real men don't cry and, be a man, all that shit. That shit is for the birds. And, like, believing that will have you bottling all these emotions up to the point where it's like the smallest thing is going to set you off, man. Beautiful people, welcome in for yet another episode of the Homie Love Hour with me, your host, Joe Buck. I want to thank you all for being here, for tuning in, and for just hanging out. It's a bit of an impromptu episode, but the weather's bad outside, felt inspired, so figured might as well set up everything and record. Now, on today's episode, I wanted to kind of talk about the Homie Love Hour as a whole. What got me into podcasting, why I'm doing this, and my overall goal for the future of the podcast. But first, I'm going to talk about our sponsors. Now, like always, the Homie Love Hour is brought to you by our sponsors, which until I get someone who wants to pay me for this show, it's going to be High Altitude Comedy and Rite of Passage Overnight Oats. High Altitude Comedy is, of course, a stand-up comedy group consisting of Nick Halverson, Timmy Motree, and myself. We are very fortunate to be able to do stand-up comedy and to bring comedy to the Rocky Mountains and allow people something a little bit different, but it also allows them a chance to kind of take a break from life and just enjoy some laughter. And Rite of Passage Oats is, of course, a vegan and gluten-free overnight oats company owned by ya boy. It started off as a passion project, but it has now turned into something much more, and I'm very fortunate to be able to allow an option to people who felt as though prior to this, they didn't have anything for breakfast. Everything is made, of course, in-house. Everything is, of course, made by me. If you have any dietary restrictions, please just let me know beforehand. But also, if you have any questions or just any interest in overnight oats or stand-up comedy, you can reach out to High Altitude Comedy on Facebook and Instagram at High Altitude Comedy. You can also reach out to me about overnight oats at riteofpassageoats.com. That's right. RITE, not right like the direction. Also, two very fun announcements. One, I have stickers. If you have any interest in picking up a sticker, reach out to me through any of the various mediums that you'd like. Let me know. I will probably sell them for anywhere from $2 to $4 just to cover the cost of them. So now that we got sponsors out of the way, how's your week going? Tell me about it. The good, the bad, everything in between. Let's talk about it. I'm here for it. And, if you don't feel comfortable leaving it in the comments down below, feel free to reach out to me. I am not a licensed therapist or a mental health professional, but I'm a homie and I can listen. But I do recommend talking to a therapist if things kind of seem a little rough, like you're feeling a little off, you're not feeling like yourself. Take some time to break away from whatever you've got going on. Sit down with a therapist, go over it, see what you can do and how you can go about addressing the issues that are currently weighing you down. And as for me, this week it's been pretty cool, honestly. Can't complain. We had pretty warm weather for the beginning of the week, and now it's back to snow, rain, cold weather, overcast days, but it's just kind of like the last throes of winter, and soon enough, it'll be warm, the thighs will be out, I'll be out on a boat on the water, enjoying things, but, got to put up with a little bit more of cold weather before I can get there. So, now that we've got our sponsors out of the way, talking about our weeks out of the way, let's get down to it. So, a lot of people always like to ask me, what is the Homie Love Hour, and why did you choose such a dumbass name? And truthfully, I started the Homie Love Hour because, one, I felt really inspired to do so. Two, because I want to create a space where people are open to talking about their past, their present, their aspirations for the future, and for me to also talk about my past, my present, my aspiration for the future. And sometimes in order to do that, we have to be vulnerable. But in order to be vulnerable, we have to trust the people that we're being vulnerable with. So we got to be vulnerable sometimes because it, going back to the episode on vulnerability, being vulnerable allows you to make genuine connections and to grow the bonds that we've already established in our lives. So, interestingly enough, I have been told that I have quote unquote father energy, and oftentimes people say they feel compelled to just tell me things, whether it's very personal things, things about their past, whatever the case may be. But oftentimes that can be really tough, especially for me learning or hearing about very traumatic experiences. Sometimes it's very wholesome, sometimes it's not. Instead of people just telling me, I want to create a space where, again, people feel comfortable to connect with one another and to talk to each other about it. Because ultimately, that's how we create a community where we all feel comfortable and accepted and are able to be open and honest with ourselves and the people around us, even if it's just virtual. And as for the name, the Homie Love Hour, it kind of started as a joke, but truthfully, it's because I chose the name and stuck with it because, like, the love that I have for the people in my life, truthfully, knows no bounds. And when I love a person, it is the closest thing to, what's the word I'm looking for? I gotta look it up now. So when I love people, it's the closest thing to unconditional as it gets. I say as close to unconditional because what I've been learning is that love cannot be unconditional because you have to set boundaries, you have to set limits. So it's the same thing with honestly every part of my life and hopefully your life, where you're just not allowing people unconditional access to you and that not being reciprocated, or people are just ignoring your boundaries or anything like that. So the mantra that I kind of created around the show is, this is a place for the people that I love to come together and talk about the things that we love. I figure that was pretty all encompassing as far as me talking to you all, and also when I have guests on, them talking to me talking to them, and then of course us talking to you all, the listeners, or watch viewers, listeners, however. I honestly believe that when you love something and you're passionate about it, it brings the best out of you when it comes to talking about that thing. Like, for me, there is no greater joy than asking someone about something and seeing that glimmer in their eye and seeing that sparkle, that hope, that fire, and listening to them pour out that passion, that love, that desire about a topic, the knowledge behind it that they've learned. And for me, I really enjoy making people laugh. I enjoy being there both with and for people. And honestly, I just want to offer a reprieve from the world. Sometimes, we look around us, life is hard, the world is tough. There's a lot of things to be upset about. So if you can come here and listen to an episode and find something that brings you a little bit of solace, a little bit of joy, or even just like a little bit of laughter, that's what the Homie Love Hour is here for. And, when I have more guests on in the future, I want to give them the platform to talk about the things that they love and how it shaped their lives. I feel like there are so many people who have amazing stories, about being at their lowest point, or maybe feeling like they didn't have anything to live for, and then that passion or that inspiration hit them and it changed their entire world around. And for some people, it's, something they've turned into a career. For other people, it may be their families. And for other people, they haven't quite found it yet, but they're enjoying the experience of going through life looking for it. I'm here for all of it, because sometimes, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey that we take to get there. And I love seeing people thriving, like not just getting by, but truthfully thriving, hitting their stride and making an active effort to be a better version of themselves, because that's my goal every single day. My buddy Stevie gave me a really good piece of advice, which is you're never going to be a perfect person. You're never going to be 100% of the time. And there will be a time where you will stumble, you'll fall, but it's about understanding that you are a person and you are going to do these things and not staying down, not beating yourself up, and not just throwing in the towel and saying, fuck it, I'm done. And I appreciated that bit of information because that is something to remember. There are oftentimes people believe that we have to be perfect all of the time. And it creates this unrealistic goal, in our lives to be perfect, to only see the good, to only smile, and to only do these things. And just like there's negativity, it creates an interesting form of toxic positivity where you are constantly saying, well, I have to be happy about this thing. I have to appreciate this thing. I have to see the good in everything. And sometimes, truthfully, you don't. Sometimes you can look at a situation and just be upset with the situation. But it's a matter of moving past that situation at a certain point. You're in the situation, you acknowledge it, you move on. You don't dwell on it, you don't allow it to take over your life, and you don't allow it to take you over. Because that's when you stop living. That's when you stop trying. That's when you stop being you. And truthfully, I don't want to see that for the people that I love, or honestly, for anybody. There's some people out here I don't even fuck with like that, but I still don't want to see them suffering. Now, as far as what got me into podcasting, I don't know. Much like everything else in my life, I'd say I've wanted to do this for a long time. I never really felt, I guess, truthfully comfortable, and I never really felt like I had a message to share. Let's see. So when it comes to podcasting, in the beginning, no. So people always ask me, why the Homie Love Hour and why did you start podcasting? And truthfully, I see this as another challenge. I feel as though for a long time, I let fear hold me back from doing a lot of things that I've wanted to do. Traveling, being more open, being more vulnerable, letting more people into my life. But it's a scary thing to do so. It's an even scarier thing to realize one day that you've allowed your entire life to just pass you by, because you don't get a second go, you don't get to hit rewind, you don't get to go back to another point. You only have the one life, and it's fleeting. It feels like just yesterday, I was in my 20s living in, a college dorm with my friends. Now, I'm on a completely different trajectory in life. So just like traveling, just like doing stand-up comedy, just like doing public speaking, just like volunteering, this is something that I have wanted to do. But I would say prior to this, one, I was terrified. Two, I never wanted to hear my own voice. And three, I didn't feel like I had a message. And for me, if I don't have a message or if I don't have something to say, then I don't bother talking. And, I've seen podcasters that are doing millions of views on social media talking about pop culture or music or video games, or kind of, you throw a dart at a board, you're bound to find someone who is talking about that topic. And I've got nothing against those people. More power to them for being able to choose something that interests them and run with it. Doesn't interest me. I don't feel like it's my place to dedicate a platform solely to these things, to those topics. I don't feel like it's my place to dedicate an entire platform to any of those topics. So when I was going over ideas for the Homie and its creation, I really sat down and mulled over ideas. Do I just want to create a space where I'm just talking trash with my friends? Sure, I could do that. But at a certain point, I think I would just get burnt out with it. Do I want to solely talk about music? I love music. It's a big part of my life, but no. So I got the idea one day to use this podcast to say all the things that I wish someone had said to me when I was younger. Why? Because I feel as though they're necessary. They're important. You know, talking about mental health is not a sexy topic. A lot of us run from the prospect or the idea of even addressing it. In the spirit of now, I feel like it's very prevalent in Western culture and even more so in a lot of the Black community that going to therapy is a sign that there's something wrong with you or that you're broken. And truthfully, there's something wrong with all of us. We all carry this invisible baggage. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of times a simple conversation is what we need to move past it. But if we never address the thing that's bothering us, then we can never move past it. We're constantly carrying it around. I saw this really beautiful quote the other day, and it said something along the lines of, you're carrying around bricks from a home that you no longer live in. And I thought that was so beautiful, but so telling of a lot of people, that even though a relationship may be over, even though we may be out of a traumatic experience, we still carry it with us. And oftentimes we project that trauma onto either ourselves or other people in our lives. And if a person doesn't know, they could be walking into like an absolute storm and they don't even know. They just want to be there with you and for you. Or maybe, you choose not to have people in your life, but you are now in this storm by yourself. And I've been very open on this podcast about my issues with mental health and things like that. And it was something that I can honestly say I didn't want to talk about for a long time. I didn't want to address the fact that I had gone to therapy, that I still go to therapy, and not addressing it made the relationships in my life that much harder because I kept everyone at arm's length. Now you think about that. Think about the people in your life that you hold nearest and dearest. Now think of it in a more literal sense. Are they hugging you, or are you keeping them away from embracing the real you? And that's a tough thing to realize when we're doing it, because sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing it. But that trauma, that hurt, that fear is what's keeping us from allowing people in. So this podcast is not only me talking to the younger me, but I'm hoping that it's me talking to someone who needs to hear this now. Because the only way to move past these things is to address the hurt and to unlearn a lot of the behaviors that we have, to unlearn the behaviors that we've used for so long to ignore it, to suppress it, to compartmentalize it. And at a certain point, like, that stuff starts to leak out. It starts to overflow. You're building your foundations on a beach. At a certain point, like, it's going to give out. And you're going to end up hurting yourself or the person or people around you. And that's something I had to realize. Like, I went years, like, when I say years, I mean years, with little to no contact with other people. I avoided eye contact. I avoided conversations. I didn't physically touch or hug anyone. I wouldn't even tell people that I love them because I was so hurt from my past, but I refused to talk to anyone about it. And it wasn't until I saw what it was doing to my family, because I had just decided, this is it. Like, this is who I am. This is who I'm going to be forever. But when I saw what it was doing to my family and how much it was hurting them, to know that, one, they couldn't be there for me, and two, that they didn't know how to be there for me, and three, they were literally watching me wither away to nothing. I realized, like, just how bad it had gotten. So I started going to therapy, and it has been an uphill climb, and maybe a hill I never reached the top of. But it's a matter of being further up that hill than I was the day before, and trusting and laughing and loving and allowing myself to experience what it is to be alive and what it is to be human, you know? And just like when I asked you all to tell me about your week, it's the good, the bad, the everything in between, because life is like a spectrum, you know? Sometimes, to quote an Italian football coach, sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit. But if I stay in the shit, I can never appreciate the good. And if everything is good all the time, it's impossible. But how can I ever appreciate anything? Because at a certain point, if I'm like, man, it's going to be great all the time, nothing matters. I have no appreciation. I have no understanding for any of it. So that's why I started this podcast. Because the one of the scariest things about going through a situation is thinking that you're the only one going through that situation. And sometimes learning that someone else is currently going through it or has gone through it, and they can help you. They can be there with you or for you. There are support groups, there are therapists. If you're a religious individual, there's there's church, there's prayer. Whatever you have to do is what you have to do. This is a journey for just you. You're on this journey by yourself. The people that you allow to be in your life are there to help you along on your journey. And that's something important. But if you never allow people to be there with you and for you, then you're always alone on that journey. And that's a tough part, And oftentimes, I see the numbers that I do, they're not amazing, but I could be doing no views on anything. I could just give up and, hit delete and talk about a bunch of shit that I'm uninspired about. But if this ever goes anywhere, or if it just stays exactly where it is, I know that I'm doing something that I can look back on and be proud of. Like, let me find the exact comment so that I can read the exact comment. Where the fuck did I see that comment? I had someone leave a comment on a clip that I posted from one of the episodes that I did. Actually, let me rephrase that. I had someone post a comment on one of the clips that went up from the episode that I did with my friend Mary. And it moved me in such a way because, one, I never thought anybody was checking for the clips that I post, let alone watching them. But this person said, let me go watch this, because why did I start to tear up as a grown man? And then someone else said that self-doubt is real. And if it's built up over months and years, that stuff is dangerous. And honestly, that's what I'm hoping to overcome and to help people overcome by pointing them in the right direction, which is, offering advice from a non-mental health professional perspective and offering alternatives. Because I will never tell you to not go to therapy or to not talk to someone who is a licensed professional, because these people have studied their entire lives about topics that we can use to better ourselves. I thought I wanted to study psychology, and I thought I wanted to be a therapist, and I realized pretty quickly I did not have it in me. So, truthfully, kudos to anyone who stuck it out and went to school, got their degree, and is now a licensed mental health professional. What you do is so important, especially in this day and age. But I remember studying and taking classes and all that stuff. Then my professor pulled me to the side one day and he said, "Hey man, can I talk to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we're hanging out, we're talking. He was like, "Hey, so what do you think of the class?" And I told him, I absolutely loved it. I loved learning it, all that stuff. He goes, "Cool. Can I tell you something?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." He goes, "I'm going to be honest with you, and you might not like it." And I was like, "Well, we're already having a conversation." And he told me He said, "You are unbelievably intelligent." He said, "I have never come across someone who has such an understanding and grasps onto topics so easily." And I was like, "Wow, thank you so much." And he goes, "But there's a but." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "I got to be honest, you're lazy as shit." And I was like, "Well, that hurt." And he goes, "No, I'm telling you this not because I want to tear you down, but because if this is what you want to do, you're looking at dedicating the next 8 to 10 years of your life to this. You're constantly going to be learning. This is a very competitive field. You have to study, you have to give your all, you need letters of recommendation, you have to get into a good school to be taken seriously. These are all things that you have to consider with your choices. And if right now I can barely get you to stay awake through class, I think you should consider changing your major." And he goes, "I'm going to leave you to think about this on your own. You let me know." And I went home and I thought about it and I was like, man, he is right. And I changed my major the next day and started studying business because I knew if I'm not dedicated to a class, how can I be dedicated to another person, let alone to be there both with and for a person who's genuinely going through something and they chose to tell me and they chose to spend their time and money on me and they're looking to me for answers. I can't bother to stay awake in class. But while I'm fortunate that my professor had that conversation with me, if I could go back, I probably would tell myself, like, bro, stick it out. Like, although it's not too late for me now, right now, I don't think it's where I'm supposed to be. So, just like before, I'm not going to bother to waste someone's time and sit in a class and study about something that I don't think I can give 100% of myself to. So yeah, maybe one day, I can have some mental health professionals on here that can give a bit more insight into the things that I'm kind of glossing over or can give more in-depth assistance to people who need it. I would love to partner with some mental health professionals at some point to point people in the right direction because I think that shit is important. Like, I've talked about this at length, but there's so much in the Black community that we have to unlearn. Like, this shit will have you fucked up, like, for real. Like, all that, real men don't cry and, be a man, all that shit is for the birds. And like, believing that will have you bottling all these emotions up to the point where it's like the smallest thing is going to set you off, man. In the past week, Amir, you can pick or choose whether you want to cut this out or leave it, but I'm just going to be really honest right here. In the past week, I've had 3 people that I went to school with when I was a kid, men in their 30s and 40s, kill multiple people over breakups, over losing their jobs, over losing family members. And like, most people don't know one person who's shot or been shot at. And just this week, I've known 3. Like, that's crazy to think about. And all of that hurt, all that pain is now being further perpetuated onto other people. And it's like, when you take that and you put it onto other people, most people aren't asking for that shit. Most people are just trying to live their lives and get by and find out a little bit of happiness when we have it. But to rob everyone around you of it because you feel as though you've been robbed of it is diabolical. And all I can say, man, is go to therapy. Like, talk to someone. Like, don't be afraid to open up. It's okay to cry. That's something that, like, I've had to learn. When I was younger, if I was vulnerable even for a second, I was angry with myself afterwards to the point where I would want to go out and fight someone because I hated how I felt being vulnerable and allowing someone to see that side of me. How fucking crazy is that? Like, you're scared to be yourself because we're not always the best versions of ourselves. Like, good days, bad days, the fucking in between days. We can't be scared to have those days because, like, that shit fucks you up. Like, being scared to be happy, like being scared to cry in front of people. Like I think one of the craziest things about being on social media is there are all these people who are equally, if not more so, unwell, who will clown you on social media for being vulnerable, who will clown you for, smiling at your baby's birth or crying at your baby's birth, finding out your homeboy just got killed, or whatever the case may be. Like, social media has done such a number on us as people because we allow strangers to affect how we see ourselves, and it just fucks us up. And it's like that's something I had to unlearn, is like, if I'm gonna let a stranger dictate to me how I feel about myself, that stranger don't have to live with me. That stranger doesn't know what I've been through. That stranger doesn't know where I'm going. But I'm gonna let some stranger like make fun of me, and I'm gonna let that stop me from being who I am? Hell no. You could call me corny, you can call me lame, but if I'm happy with who I am, fuck do I care what anybody else has got to say. Like that's a level of peace I wish for everybody. To be happy with themselves and to push past all the bullshit. Cuz that social media shit will have you out here trying to take people's lives and like be tough and be hard to impress a bunch of people online that you're never going to meet. Think about that. This ain't fucking middle school or high school no more. Like, you're whoever's watching this, you look at your life and you truthfully sit down and think about it. What impact does a stranger have on your life? And if it's anything above zero, why? Why does this person have such an effect on your life? And if you can't think of a valid reason, then you got some evaluating you need to do, Doug. Next, going to get to my goals for this show, which I think I've been pretty upfront with over the course of this episode. I want to see this shit grow, and not for myself. Honestly, I truthfully don't give a shit if I never see a dime from this, because I'm not doing this to get rich. I have enough side hustles, truthfully, that like it keeps me pretty busy. But the prospect of helping people come together to better themselves is my end goal for everything. Whether it's, just having a better day, having a better moment, or hopefully long term effects, you have a better life. That's really all I want for other people. We've been told like we have to monetize everything in our lives. Why do something for free when you can get paid to do it? Fuck, man. I don't know if I'll ever see a dime from this show. Whatever. I care more about my fellow person and getting a message out there, and hopefully this resonates with someone. And if it doesn't, oh well. I've just been a nigga talking to a camera for however long this show goes. But if it reaches just one person and it helps them change their perspective or find some inspiration or learn to be vulnerable or stops them from getting scammed in a mountain town, like, then I've done the thing that I've set out to do. And if people connect on here and talk and we build that community where we move past those societal expectations, those societal constraints, and we learn to be there for one another and to support one another, then I've done my job. And if I ever get paid from this show, the money's probably just going to go to my producer. He does more behind the scenes than I could ever admit. Like, all the clips, some of the ideas, all the editing, that's all him, man. Like, I just sit here and talk to y'all and hope for the best. But I just want to see people be better and do better. And whatever that means to you, that's what I want for you. Whether it's you making more money, hey, I hope you make more money. Whether it's traveling, I hope you travel. Whether it's finally acknowledging the trauma that's in your life and moving past it, God damn it, I hope you do just that. And all that baggage we carry with us, leave that shit at the door, man. Like, you need time to enjoy yourself and to be yourself. And it's hard to do that when you're carrying around a bunch of bullshit that truthfully you probably had no business even having to go through as a person. But unfortunately, life is unfair. Life is hard. But if we're there for each other, it makes it that much easier. That's all I could hope for. That's all I hope for. I'm fortunate, like, because I've opened up, I've allowed myself to meet people and people who genuinely care about me. People who I know I can trust, I can call and talk to, people who've seen me at my worst. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest fears in life is someone seeing me at my worst. And now I feel like the people closest to me in life have seen me more at my worst than they've seen me at my best. And after the first, second, third time, I'm just like, you know what? This shit isn't even that bad. It's embarrassing, absolutely. And sometimes, like, yeah, I got to go back and be like, hey, sorry you saw that outburst, or, my fault. I didn't mean to, dump all that shit on you at one time. But the homies have been there for me. And I feel like sometimes we don't know how to let people be there for us. We don't want the people in our lives to know that we're suffering or that we're having an off day. So maybe you'll talk to a random motherfucker on the internet. Maybe that's what you need, because you don't want to talk to the people in your life. You don't want to scare them, but you'll talk to a stranger on the other side of the planet, on the other side of the country, hell, on the other side of town. But that's my goal for the Homie Love Hour moving forward. I don't want every episode to be this serious or as serious as some of the other episodes, but sometimes we got to be serious. And it's something that I feel like I've spent too much of my life being overly serious. So I'm learning to laugh more. I'm learning to joke more. I'm learning not to take myself as serious as I used to, because just like everything else, I'm a trip, sometimes literally. And if I can't laugh at myself, then what the fuck is the point? Like, I laugh at my dog when he trips walking up the stairs. One time I was walking up the stairs, he tripped walking up the stairs, and then I tripped on the same step walking up the stairs. And all I could do was laugh. And it seems dumb, minuscule, innocuous even, but it's one of those things where in that moment, I still found a reason to laugh at myself, found a reason to laugh at my dog. You can't be so cool that you can laugh at other people, but you can't laugh at yourself. Because, I don't know, man. Be less hard on yourself. Be less serious with yourself, man. Let yourself enjoy yourself. That's something I'd like for people to remember truthfully. Just sit back sometimes and look at where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go. Plan that shit out. Like, if you would ask me 5 years ago, would I do any of the things that I do right now? Fuck no. I was miserable as shit I was miserable as shit working in a restaurant that I fucking hated, dealing with people that I hated. But my job was so easy, I didn't have to think about it. I had a handful of friends, not really people that I fully trusted, but over the years, thanks to therapy and pushing myself and holding myself accountable, I started taking public speaking courses. I moved away from that job. I've moved away from a lot of things that have made me unhappy, because that's not who I want to be anymore. Life is only getting shorter from here. Why would I want to be unhappy? Like, with situations I can control. If I hate my job, it's been real, bro. I'm out of here. If I got a person in my life bringing me nothing but frustration, I'm going to be here for you, but I got to do it at a distance. Like, there's so much bullshit we put in our own lives and we refuse to remove it. It's wild. But not me, not anymore. And there's times where the bullshit is unavoidable. Sometimes the bullshit will find you out. Nothing we can do about that, but it's how we handle ourselves and how we address it and how we move past it. That's how we determine how much the bullshit is going to affect us. So I want to see you be the best version of you. Doesn't have to be all the time, but sometimes when it matters most, I want you to be there, to be able to be there for you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a pause on this episode. We might revisit it again in the future. This might be a long pause, but it's going to get revisited at some point. I just don't know when, Just like when I talked about poetries, short stories, ideas, that episode is going on pause, but we're going to come back to it. So remember these 3 things. Be good to yourself, be good to the world around you, and remember above all else, I love you, homie.